joining us today. My name is Margie Cosmerl, and the company is Blue Heron Financial Group. As many of you know, we have had a now 24-year relationship with Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union, and next month will be 27-year relationship with LPL Financial. And I think, Quincy, if I have this right, you and I have probably known each other 20 plus of those years.
Oh, 20 plus.
I stopped there. I stopped.
Yeah, there. Yeah, but it's more than 20 years. I know that.
I think it is.
Yes, I know that. I know that.
So I am delighted to have Dr. Quincy Krosby join us. She comes from just such a vast background, whether it was on Wall Street, whether it was in her role as a diplomat overseas and working within the financial institution arena all these years. And I just pay heed to what Quincy has to say. She does have a podcast. I listen to that pretty faithfully because it just gives me some good nuggets, and that's on Spotify. So if you're looking for a good financial program to listen to on your podcast, it's Spotify. And the title of it, Quincy, is, what is it?
It's Talking Point.
Talking Point. Thank you. Thank you.
We're coming out with another one, by the way, which will be shorter and just on the markets. It'll be a 4-minute one, and just on the markets. We'll do it every week. Oh. And it will be coming in after our big focus meeting, which is our convention, folks, for LPL. And that'll be, it'll be sometime in September, October. Yes, and that will be much easier to follow, I think.
I like those quick little, like, okay, give me the bullets.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So Quincy, you and I had shared some emails, some topics. I know that our clients, they have on their minds, and some of these are in the future. So we could either start currently with some of the current buzz, and that of course is around inflation, Fed. So why don't we start with some current events and then switch gears and talk a little later about things in the not too distant future, such as Social Security and deficits and things like that, tax brackets. So how about we start with some discussion about what's been transpiring from 23 into 24, market leadership, Mag 7, and I'm just going to turn it over to you because folks hear me all the time, and we're delighted again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it, and thank you all for joining. There's so much going on, and it's been an incredible 2023 and going into 2024. And what we've seen in the market is obviously a major shift, and I think you all know what it is. It has been for artificial intelligence, AI. And you most know the company that has been in the forefront in the market for AI, which is NVIDIA. And those of you who know gaming, and this is Northrop Grumman military. You had a lot of military contracts, but one of the things that we know is how important the gaming, and this is interesting, the gaming technology has been fast forwarded to actually being used with AI, more and more AI, generative AI, for the military, for drones, for example. So again, but the shift has been dramatic. But in addition to that, and we'll get into that in a second, it also has been very much about the Federal Reserve and about inflation, and the Fed's almost desperation to quell inflation and get it to a level where they feel as if they're confident enough to begin cutting interest rates. Keep in mind that our neighbors to the north in Canada, the Bank of Canada, just started to cut rates. Over in Europe, the European Central Bank just cut rates, and the National Bank in Switzerland started to cut rates. So in other words, we are in essence behind all of these, our peers, in terms of beginning to cut rates. But the Federal Reserve is determined to not make a major mistake. And that's what I want to focus on, because folks are saying, why don't they cut rates? And by the way, Congress is going after them and saying, could you please cut rates, because our folks in our district are suffering. And in fact, that is the case. The lower wage earners are suffering. Higher interest rates across the boards, higher prices, and they are indicating that we see from what the banks are telling us, they're late with payments, they're late with auto loans, and so on. So this is the story. The Fed was late to begin cutting rates. They've acknowledged, or at least they admit it. They thought much of it had to do with the supply chain, and that, the higher prices would level off much more quickly. And finally, they realized, that's not the case. We really have to start raising rates. And they did, and they did, and they did, and they did. I mean, they just kept at it. However, some of the inflation is much more stubborn. And the way that we manage and measure inflation in this country, those of you who are on Social Security know the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's the one that decides how much the Social Security checks are going to go up. But within that CPI, the Consumer Price Index, about 30% of it has to do with housing. It has to do not just with the price of your house, but what you can rent it out for. Now, it may sound odd, and in this business, we basically have to acknowledge that this is the way they measure things. We can't substitute the way we measure it. But here's the thing. It's what I can rent it out for. And what do we know? And by the way, it's about a third of the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Rents are still high across the country. Now, mind you, those of you who are out west, it's actually a little bit lower. Rents are coming down. However, and in the Midwest as well. But we're seeing in the Northeast, even in New York City, you'd think that New York City, the rents would be coming down, not so fast, because back to work is picking up. Folks are having to actually go into the city now. Many of them are looking for places to rent. Those rents are still high. And there's another element to this. When you sign a rent contract, a lease, it lasts for a while. And so what the Fed is trying to do is to ascertain through the data that they can receive from the industry, what about new contracts? And this is the good news. Most of them are coming down, and it will soon start to affect that part of the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and allow the Fed to feel more comfortable in beginning to cut rates. Also, and this, everyone knows this, the other part that has been very sticky in terms of higher prices has been insurance.
Oh, right.
Insurance. Yeah, I just actually sent the check in. State Farm, can you hear me? Yes, I sent the check in. Higher. And why is that? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is that we actually saw more accidents after COVID ended. People were like driving like crazy, no seatbelts on, speeding. And of course, the insurance companies all get this data, and they said, you know what? We are going to have to raise those rates. So they did. There's another element too, and that is the newer the car, the more complicated it is to fix it. All of that technology costs more money, and they are accounting for that and adjusting for that. And that's the reason. Now, the good news on this is in the last batch of inflation reports, actually it shows that the insurance company higher rates have been leveling off. That is very, very good news.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you were up exorbitant and
exorbitant. There's no other way to describe it. Exorbitant. And I do want to point out that there is the CPI. And why am I mentioning this? Oh, because of Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. The Fed has its preferred index for inflation. And the data that the Fed gets is called the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, the PCE. The data is not from us and the CPI, Consumer Price Index. It comes from surveys from us, the consumer, but the PCE comes from businesses. That's the difference between them. They get all of the data from businesses. Excuse me. Here's the hope. The hope right now is that the year-over-year number actually comes down just a tad, and that the month-over-the-month number in core, and I don't want to get into it in this call, it gets too geeky, but in the core area, that too comes down just a bit. This is what the market is expecting. Now, will the market be happy if it's even lower than the expectations? You better believe it. And expectations for a rate cut. Right now, they're focused on September, but maybe it will become just a little bit earlier. Remember, the Fed can cut rates anytime they want. They can raise rates anytime they want. They don't need to wait for a meeting, but they want to be careful. They want to make sure that inflation is moving toward 2%. That is the level at which that the Fed and most of the central banks see where rates are comfortable. They're not going to hurt the economy. They're not going to help the economy. They're just right there, and it's 2%. The other thing is they want to make sure that inflation has not coming down. They call that disinflation, by the way, has not stalled, because that's what we saw some months ago. It just stopped. And then finally, deep breath, it started to come down a bit over in the CPI, Consumer Price Index. And now we're hoping Friday morning, 8:30 Eastern, you'll see the futures market reacting. You'll see the 10-year Treasury yield. You'll see mortgage rates reacting to where that is. That's how important it is. Now, what is the Fed afraid of? It's afraid of if it were to come out and start cutting rates, and they're not sure about where inflation is, they're afraid that maybe it starts to tick up again. And those of you, I can't look around because I can't see you. I only see Margie and myself. They're worried that they may have stagflation, the kind of environment we had in the late 70s and in the early 80s, in which the economy slowed down, but inflation kept rising and rising. That's what they want to make sure of, that's not in the system, because once it gets there, it actually just takes over. And they want to feel comfortable and confident. And how do I say this? I say it this way. We have to let them do their job, because you got to feel for them. The head of the Fed, Jerome Powell, is a Republican. He's got Democrats in the committee that makes these decisions. He's got Republicans, he's got Democrats. But from what we can tell from all of their comments, they have one thing in common, and that's doing their job right. They know they were wrong before by not raising rates more quickly. They don't want to make another mistake. So we just have to keep that in mind. Now, in terms of the economy, as I alluded to, and this is important for the stock market, it's important for rates. It is that the lower wage earner, under pressure, absolutely under pressure. We see it from every metric that we have. The concern is this, that if rates stay this high, that it works its way up in the wage scale. So it's not just lower wage earners, but it is the lower middle class wage earner. And they don't want that to climb any higher. And this is what is worrying. Now, what is the linkage between consumer spending and the economy? We, the consumer, are responsible for nearly 70% of our economy, of the GDP, gross domestic product. And what's the link over in the labor market? What we know is if the job market deteriorates at a faster clip, consumers are going to hold back, and they're already being more careful. Every report I see says that consumers are looking for those off brands. because, you know, we've learned enough that those off brands are usually actually manufactured by the top brands. You know how they have all those reports? So I'll save some money on an off brand knowing that the top brand is actually manufactured it. But that's what we're doing more and more. And we're being discerning and we're being careful. At the same time, and this is the difficulty where we are right now, to get a clear picture of really what's going on. We heard from Carnival yesterday. What did Carnival tell us? Guess what? They're signed up through 2025. How
Wow.
about that? Right? We heard from Delta a while ago that their numbers flying. Business travelers flying because they love that because business travelers spend more money. But the U.S. regular retail consumer flying everywhere overseas. And TSA told us that there were records set just over the last number of days, and they're expecting that around the 4th of July weekend.
I can believe it. I was in the airport this last weekend and it was crazy.
And yeah, it's been crazy. And you know, the problem is, Roger, I can't tell who's a business traveler anymore because no one dresses up.
True.
They all look like a bunch of tech guys going somewhere now. So
well, and even when you see these families and they're headed to Orlando or whatever. So
yes,
back to the consumer and spending.
Exactly. But that's we are trying to ascertain, and the Fed is where we're headed. And why is it important for us at the end of all of our, maybe my spending or is my neighbor spending? This is why. Because the Fed has said, look, we want to be real careful about cutting rates. We want to make sure inflation is down. However, this is the big however, right? Semicolon, however, comma. However, if the labor market deteriorates, we will start cutting rates because the Fed has two mandates. One mandate is price stability, getting to 2%. And the other mandate, the one that is really important for the Fed, is to provide an environment of sustainable economic growth. That's the labor market. And if they start seeing that the labor market deteriorates, they will cut rates. Now, here's how do they do it? How do they know? Well, this is how we know. We watch initial unemployment claims. That has become so important. And that's out 8:30 a.m. on Thursday morning. So, by the way, that's become watched globally. How about all over the world? They're watching that because everyone's watching to see how's the Fed going to see this? We've seen initial unemployment claims tick higher, still okay. But if we continue to see tick higher, we will know that unemployment numbers are going to go from 4% and higher. Also, we're watching continuing claims that come out at the same time. And what are we seeing? A little bit higher, suggesting that folks are having trouble finding another job right away. All of this matters, but right now, as we have this discussion, still pretty healthy. But we're watching. Anytime there's a shift, we watch in both directions. So that's where we are. It's mixed. The consumer, all important consumer, more discerning, more careful, and yet we're still spending, but we're being careful. We're going on cruises, we're flying, but we're being careful. What's important in this? Gasoline prices. I cannot emphasize the importance of gasoline prices for a couple of things. And Margie, I hope I'm not going rogue on this call, but I'm trying
No, I think we just keep going whichever direction we go.
Because this is important for the administration, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But we also follow, and the Fed follows, and any administration, Republican, Democrat, they all follow this. What consumers saying? Well, overall, consumers are worried. Yes, they are. And what we have also discovered is that Republican consumers, because sometimes they ask, which political party are you affiliated with? And they will say, well, things don't look really good. Whereas the Democrats are saying, I'm still worried, but not that much. They're a little bit more, what should I say, positive and optimistic, but not that much. But the other thing that we follow is, what are they saying about future inflation? Because if their expectations suggest that future inflation is going to climb higher over the next year, 3 years, or 5 years, the Fed is watching that because it's very difficult for any central bank to change that psychology. Because, you know, when you think inflation is higher and going to be higher and higher, your thinking is this: hey, you know what? Spend money now because it's going to be more expensive later. If you think inflation's coming down, like in Japan, all these years, it's, hey, wait, it'll be cheaper next year. It'll be cheaper thereafter. Why gasoline prices are so important is this. We know that when gasoline prices start climbing higher and then higher the next day, even by a penny and 2 pennies, and not a dollar necessarily, consumers see it, even if they're driving electric vehicles, even if they're in Uber and looking out the window, because you know how many filling stations you pass. And what then happens then? Two things happen then. Invariably, their expectations for higher inflation climbs higher. And also, this is where it affects the administration. You start blaming whoever is in the White House and really blaming them. So this is why the White House, Biden is watching prices himself when he's being moved around in the big black Suburban or a limousine. He doesn't want that climbing higher. And they drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserve when Ukraine and Russia, that conflict began. And they drained it to bring gasoline cheaper, make gasoline cheaper. The expectations right now, if gasoline prices rise, remember, we're going right into that season where pretty soon we're going to make up our minds that there's a gasoline reserve. They'll take that out. So everyone knows that gasoline prices are not going to rise and will be left higher by the administration. And I want to report, if there was a Republican administration, they would do the same thing. So all of this, and where do we see inflation? We do start seeing coming down. Take a look at all of the price wars. Target, Walmart, Wendy's, Burger King, and also my favorite, McDonald's. Cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Trying to get you to go in and trying to get you to spend some money. The big box stores, they want to see us come in for back to school. This is important. The back to school sales have started. They want us in there. Why? And how do we judge it? It's a harbinger of consumer spending and harbinger of consumer spending during the holiday season. But it will give us a glimpse. Is the consumer really going to hold back when your kid is begging you for a new laptop or a new iPad? We're going to find out pretty soon. So that's where we are. Now, in terms of the stock market, remember what I said, the stock market is not the consumer. No, the stock market looks ahead. The stock market and the S&P 500, we look at it and we look at what's leading the market higher, because that typically tells us really where the economy is going to go. And does it shift along the way? Oh yeah, it does. And sometimes it's not certain. So let's go over that, if I may, Margie, because what we're looking for is a sign from the market. Do they see the economy really, really pulling back to the point that it sees a recession? Because you know what? The stock market does not like a recession. The stock market wants to have the Fed cut rates, but cut rates with it actually solid, maybe cooler economy, but not a recession.
Right.
So how do we know by looking at the market? What signals? So one is we take a look at consumer staples. That's all the stuff you have to have versus consumer discretionary things you don't really need. Do you really need to go to see Taylor Swift and fly over to the next place where she's going to be? No, you don't really need it. Your kids don't need it. Your grandkids don't need it. Your nieces and nephews don't need it, but they may want it and you may help them. That is consumer discretionary, right? That I don't need to go on a cruise. That's consumer discretionary. Staples is I gotta have it. I really have it for my life. You know, I do a lot of client events, Margie, as you know, live, and I can see how I get a sense of the age of people. But I always say this: if you see consumer staples leading the market higher, not maybe one day, but for a week or 2 weeks, you know that the market is really expecting a more significant slowdown. And in particular, if you see one company leading that consumer staples higher, it's getting serious. And that would be the manufacturer who distributes spam. When spam leads the market higher, I always tell
The
folks,
spam indicator.
it's a spam indicator. Here's my telephone number. You can call me. I'll get you off of the cliff, but I'll also tell you how you can fix it so it tastes okay if you're desperate. We've got some recipes that a lot of my compatriots from overseas, where we were, who had so much spam in their houses, I was like, you're waiting for the end of the earth. And they would joke and say, well, Quincy, we left it for you because we didn't want to take it to the next place, posting, that's what we call it. And we'll give you some recipes. And some of them are actually pretty good. But that's it. But right now, consumer discretionary is leading. Good news. We also look for the semiconductor sector to lead the market higher. And why? And you all know why. Because the chips are in everything. Everything. I got a toothbrush that is mechanical, and obviously there's a chip in it, and it was talking to me. And I threw it out. Don't talk to me when I'm brushing my teeth. Can you see me too? I threw it out. They're in everything. They're in the vehicles. They are everywhere. But they are a picture of global demand. And increasingly, the preponderance of the semiconductor stocks and the chips themselves have a larger proportion in the S&P 500 than they did, say, 10 years ago. So we look at that as a snapshot of global demand. Also, I'm old-fashioned, and I'm not giving up on this. I like to see where the transports are, because the transports, the railroad, the trucks, they move things for us. And I want to say they've been holding back. They've been a little bit back. We saw a day that it moved higher. I want to see it stronger. It'll give me a sense that folks are ordering things, and they're not ordering things, to come to us with a 737. It's usually a prime truck, but even there, they're using drones from place to place. So we're going to keep our eye on that. Also, you saw a couple of days where the so-called Magnificent Seven. So you know who they are. They are NVIDIA, they are Meta, they are Alphabet, I call Google, and they are Microsoft, and Tesla is in there as well. What I'm seeing, though, is a broadening within that technology pantheon, if I can call it that, with other technology names that help the AI endeavor. And that would be Broadcom. You saw what happened with their numbers, saying, look, we have we have chips that we're selling. Remember, this goes into the infrastructure, selling in order for quicker processing and more processing. Oracle's numbers weren't even good, but their guidance pushed their share price up dramatically because they also have the ability to help make AI faster and quicker. And then we also had on the AI, Adobe coming in with their AI thing. So AI has become a major thing. Now, a lot of folks are saying, Quincy, it sounds great. It's expensive. Companies are using it, but that we are looking again, because the market is not inexpensive, folks. But what we're looking for in the next earnings season, which is going to come out very quickly, remember, we look back, so we always look back, is how are companies like Microsoft, like Apple, we already saw what they're doing. They're integrating all the AI into their functions, into their devices. How are they monetizing it? The market wants to say, okay, this is all great, but how are you making money on it? Right? And this is what's important. I mean, at the end of the day, we know it's going to go into customer service, and the jobs will be lost, but there will be other job openings. We've seen this historically. Also, you're going to see in the media industry, particularly on the internet and newspapers, how often do I see, with the help of such and such, it's an AI. So this is a very sick joke that's out there. The more AI you use in your job, chances are your job is at risk. That sounds funny and kind of dark humor, but that's the case. Now, are there problems with AI? Yes, there are. And it's called hallucinations. And I want to make this case because we're reading over and over again. Oh, my company spent a lot of money on it and it's not working. And we got to look for something else. We got to look at something that really works. Hallucinations refers to, I asked a chat box. I said, tell me about such and such. And I get a report that looks beautiful, line after line, but it doesn't make any sense. It's actually gibberish. Doesn't make any sense. That's hallucination. You want to know another one? I mentioned McDonald's because this is my all-time favorite. McDonald's paid a lot of money for an AI-generated ordering system so that they'd save money and they'd save time. And this is what happened, folks. One of my favorites is McDonald's chicken sandwich. I like it better than even some of the chicken names that we know. There's something about the way they do it with the pickle and all that. I love it. Quincy goes through the drive-through. I'd like a chicken sandwich. I'd like a soda. I'd like one order of the fries. Thank you very much. I go back and pick it up. I've got 5 chicken sandwiches. I've got 7 fries. And oh yeah, you wanted what, 30 sodas? No. But over and over and over again, the mistakes were made and they had to pull it. They couldn't change it. They couldn't fix it. That is hallucinatory if there ever was. So this is what's going on. Companies are saying, I got to order this. I certainly have to use it, but I have to make sure I'm going to save money on it, not have hallucinations, right? So
Right.
that's it. But nonetheless, it's not going away. And I want to stress this. These companies make money. So everyone says it's like 1999 and 2000, 1998, I worked in the industry then. Those companies most of them did not make money. It was .com and, on anything, and you could do an initial public offering. The market loved it. And it all went belly up, as we all know what happened. These companies have rock solid balance sheets. They are the best of the best. They are companies that are mature. Actually, NVIDIA is very mature because, again, it was a leader in gaming. It was a leader in the technology for gaming. And then it came over to provide the infrastructure for the big companies that we know to develop AI products. And so they make a fortune. They make a fortune until they don't. I mean, it's going to slow down. It always slows down. And we will know in the next earnings season what they have to say. Guidance is increasingly important when we're trying to figure out how's the U.S. consumer, how's the economy, and the companies tell us in guidance. So they get their revenue growth, they get their bottom line, operating margins, and that guidance is crucial, especially because this market is not inexpensive. What are we hoping for? We are hoping for this, and it happened yesterday. Technology slows down a bit, right? Buyers will come in, make it more attractive in terms of the price. But also, I want to see other sectors involved. I want to see industrials. I want to see financials. I even want to see a smattering of some healthcare. We know which companies are doing well. Oh yeah, we do. I won't go into it now, but we do know which companies are doing well. And we want to see some of the energy names, a smattering of that in there, a bigger breadth in the market, and not just with these generals. That's what we would always say. The generals are great, but what happens when they get hit? You got to have something underneath. And that's what we saw a bit of yesterday, which was very comforting. They can coexist. They certainly can coexist. But I want to point out that those 7 names, and I could take out Tesla, but say 6 names, they make up a huge portion of our stock market. But remember, they are strong. They're not 1999 technology names. And let me close this. When the market collapsed, and oh my God, it was called the new paradigm, by the way. That's what we call the boom, the tech boom back then, new paradigm. There were people who were like completely disillusioned. They had so bought into this. But this is what ultimately happened. Margie, do you remember? The market got quiet. quiet with that lasso off. Like it was almost like it was scary. Like,
Mhm.
okay, what now? What now? And I'll tell you what now was. Suddenly there was a shift.
Right.
And that shift was companies that you wouldn't dare mention to clients because it made you look old. Big standard companies that are the basis of our economy, strong companies, suddenly coming out and saying they were going to use this new technology, right? The internet, getting laptops for some of their employees. They started to talk about this, one company after another, and that was the evolution of technology, evolution of me. I found my my, what do you call it, my BlackBerry. It was
Oh, oh yeah,
the
yeah.
suitcases,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and my iPhone, and you see how what's happened.
Right.
That is how AI is going to evolve. And you think, by the way, it's new. I just want to add this, if I may, because I love this. May I do this? On this call, any of you remember the movie Space Odyssey? It goes way, way back. You remember how in there, Hal was the computer that talked. Hal was the computer that at the end of the movie, they had to pull the plug on him and basically kill him. That was Stanley Kubrick who created that movie, a homage to IBM. IBM created a major computer that was just like Hal. IBM sold that computer to Bell Labs, and back then the laboratories associated with the phone system
Sure.
were
AT&T.
cutting edge,
Sure. Yeah.
cutting edge, cutting edge, cutting edge. And then I say this because my husband was involved in that bit. And then at the end of the movie, how the big computer, the one that is IBM is known for then, that was sold to Bell Labs, is singing a song. He is singing a song as he's dying. And you know why that's important? Because Hal was singing the song, and you know the song, Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy of the love of you. And it's broken up, and you almost want to cry yourself. Why was that important? And what was Stanley Kubrick doing? Because on the record, historical record, that the very first AI generated song
Wow.
was that song generated by Bell Labs,
Wow.
by that computer. And if you look
Very,
it up, you will hear it. So it goes back, and the military and our militaries all over the world have been using AI. Now it's going to go through another evolution to make it part of our everyday lives. Will there be zigs and zags? Yes. Keep that in mind. There will be zigs and zags. There always are. But we're remember cloud, when cloud was introduced? To this day, I don't even know what the cloud means.
right, right.
It just means that Apple says, hey, you've got too many photographs. Please give us more money. I don't know where they're sitting up in the sky. I have no idea, but cloud was the big thing.
Mhm.
So this is it, but these are strong companies. But we're seeing and we're hoping for a broadening in the market. And we will look to pay attention again, which companies, which sectors are leading the market higher. And remember how important we are, the consumer. We will be following the data about how we're doing and our linkage to the labor market. All of this coming together. And an election is coming up, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, so this is it. And we also have a gigantic debt. We have a budget deficit, that's our own budget, but we also have a bigger deficit, which is $34 trillion and counting, and getting higher and higher. And Washington, D.C., refusing to do its job, the way, shall I say, FedEx is doing its job,
Mhm.
right? Cutting and doing what they have to do to get the share price up. So what happens to Social Security? What happens to the Medicare, Medicaid? This is a big problem. And everyone just puts a little Band-Aid, so to speak, on Medicare, Medicaid. But with the baby boomers, the last of the baby boomers retiring, They want to say that their views are, look, I paid into this. Don't tell me you're going to take it away. Don't you tell me you're going to take it away. And they're not telling them that they're going to take it away because they're never going to be reelected.
Right.
And so this is the dilemma. The dilemma is this, that they have to do something, without a doubt. I'll tell you what most Americans are saying. We see all of the surveys from Democrats and Republicans. They say, go after the billionaires who don't pay any taxes. Go and tax them a higher amount that then can be put into Social Security and put into Medicare and Medicaid. Do that. And I don't know, the politicians on both sides of the aisle don't seem pretty ecstatic about that because they want the backing of these billionaires. So one of the things we could see down the road is perhaps higher taxes across the board. Oh, and Biden administration says, well, not below 400,000, anything above. Well, it'll be a bit more. You'll see it come out of that amount that you have to pay for Medicare B, right? When you go Medicare B, you could go up to $500 if you earn over $200,000. They'll inch that higher. They'll inch everything higher because they have to, unless they do their jobs. And that's going to be difficult for them because that is what we call the third rail of politics. You do that and no one's going to vote for you. The other thing that they can do, and this has been done before, is they can raise the retirement age. This is dicey. It's difficult. Take a look at what's going on in France right now.
Right.
This is one of the major issues. Emmanuel Macron, who is president of France, he raised the retirement age, not even by much, but our standards is like, oh my gosh, they're so lucky they can retire with full benefits. So we're so young. They stopped traffic in France. They said no. They said it is elitist. What about construction workers who really do need to retire earlier because their backs are breaking? He went ahead and he pushed that legislation through. The far right party that looks as if they're going to win. Finally, they're going to win after all these years. That is one of their biggest platform items. We're lowering that age. Now, the problem with all of this, that is, it costs more money. And Macron, to get voters to back him, is saying, you really want this? Is this what you want? We're going to have a bigger budget because all of these giveaways that the far right is planning. Not to mention that the ultra left wing is also going against him, promising this, promising that. That's the same thing in our country. It will cost a lot more. It is going to have to change. It will change. There's an old saying, it doesn't matter till it matters. Our debt is just enormous. And and some people ask me, because how do we pay off our debt? I'll tell you how we do it. We have treasury auctions. We sell our debt. If there becomes a period in which folks are saying, well, I'm not going to go and buy that stuff. The inflation is just going to keep going higher and higher. America can't manage this debt. Then we have a problem. That may force the leaders to do something. I will share this, and maybe this will be my last comment. This isn't my homily. And this is that many years ago, President George Bush, the son, thought it would be a great idea. He was pushed by Wall Street. They thought it was, oh my God, that this was an idea made in heaven. Let's privatize Social Security. Right. Let's privatize it. We won't have to worry about it. And a committee was formed and said, let's privatize Social Security and at the same time take away the mortgage tax relief. Let's take that away. And this will be very helpful for the budgets. And so the president's committee said to Republicans across the country, I mean, when I say, I don't mean voters necessarily, but like head of a Republican party here, head of a Republican party there, go out and sell this and come back and let us know what the reaction is. And you know what the reaction is? The reaction is, this happened, right? That that. But specifically, this was the reaction. They were coming back and saying, Mr. President, if you want this, you go out and campaign for it. And they came back and they said, I was out where I live, and the head of the Republican Party said to me, don't you dare even talk about this. I was raised by a mom who relied on Social Security. We can't do this. Democrats and Republicans alike saying, don't you even think about it. We need this. And do we need it? You are so lucky to have, as your steward for retirement, many of you are retired, is my colleague, Margie, and her team, because you can retire. You know how many Americans are retired just on their Social Security? The numbers are staggering, staggering. It's heartbreaking, but there you are. These are the facts. So whether or not Trump wins, he's going to have a problem. Biden is going to have to do something about this. And in terms of the 2025 taxes, President Trump has said, you guys have it. You guys have it. We make it permanent. Biden, on the other hand, is talking about capital gains, that we need to up capital gains, even on dividends. I take a deep breath as I say that personally. But you see the divide. And here's the deal. Either one, it is costing more and more money. It is upping our deficits from the Republican side and the Democratic side. It's like politicians can't say no. And the question is, when they win, what are they going to do? Most likely, they will go ahead and at least do some of what they're talking about. And the good news is this, I'll end on my homily on good news, that if the Republicans come in, you still have to have a Republican Senate, Republican House of Representatives to get everything through easily. But there will be horse trading. There's always horse trading in DC. And that will be because Biden has things that he wants to pay for, that he's been paying for. A lot of childcare things on the liberal progressive platform that has been enacted. He will want to keep that if the Republicans come in. There'll be horse trading around his infrastructure spending that he wants to continue. And if he wanted EV, electric vehicles, President Trump said, we're getting rid of that. You forget that. Maybe President Trump got my message. You're not taking my Suburban. That's the last thing that goes, is my Suburban. But the point is that if Biden wins, he wants Quincy to say, get rid of it now and get an electric vehicle, because you're not going to be able to go very far with it, Quincy. You know what he's going to have to do to get an electric vehicle out of me? Put in the infrastructure. So I can drive across the country and not worry and have that anxiety about where I can get more electricity, right? And speaking of electricity, AI demanding tremendous amount of electricity, tremendous amount. So they're going to have to figure this all out. And so that is our future. Our job in the market and preserving capital is, as we go into the summer up to the election, there will be pockets of volatility. I'm not guaranteeing that, but it's the case that we think we're going to have pockets of volatility. Here's the good news. Pockets of volatility bring us pockets of opportunity, things that we have wanted and we were afraid to go into. Maybe it was too expensive. We then have opportunities. And the good news is, statistically, historically, we tend to end the year in positive territory, unless there's some exogenous shock, which we don't know about. Obviously, it's a black swan, but we don't think that is going to happen. And so that's the good news, is that we will probably pull back in the market. 5% is not even uncommon in historical charts, but it makes people nervous. It's that pocket of volatility, but it allows us to take advantage of what we wanted. I want to repeat that, but which suddenly becomes less expensive. And then as we get closer to the election, a little bit more jitters, and then we get the final vote, which we hope, and then we come out the end of the year in positive territory. 75% of the time, the S&P 500 is in positive territory historically. But you have to have those pockets of volatility. That's what makes a market. And our job, again, is working with our advisors at LPL, helping them see the past, the present, and the future. So I can't thank you enough, Margie, for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Quincy. And there is a lot in there. I'm just going to highlight a couple takeaways that Quincy was talking about. And some of these are comments I'll hear from our clients. And that is, has the market gotten too far ahead of itself? Is it too frothy? And we were talking a lot about AI and this broadening. I've heard a lot about utilities, and Quincy just talked about, hey, there better be that station if I'm going to be getting the EV, but there also has to be the utility infrastructure to support the AI. And then the volatility, we keep on popping up charts in all of our meetings. Yeah, look at all these data points when the market was down during the year, but just as Quincy statted out here, the 75% positive on the S&P 500, let's hang our hats on that. And then as far as inflation and the Fed, that's been the topic du jour for 2 years now, because they did get behind the 8 ball. And I have been pleasantly surprised that they have, so far so good, been engineering a pretty good soft landing. I honestly was very skeptical, but it is, and it has been taking place. But they are data dependent, whether it's the jobs and whether it's going to be PCE on Friday. Again,
8:30 a.m. Eastern.
and I will be, yes, with my ear glued to whatever financial station I'm on. And if Quincy looks familiar to some of you, you probably have seen her on CNBC, Bloomberg, because that's how her input to us as advisors, but also to our clients, how important it is. And I just can't thank you enough for the many years that of our friendship. And I will continue to, yes, oftentimes hang on your every word. And I know also that if I have questions, and this is just, you know, I can only say I appreciate it so much that I can come to you with these questions. And I think
always.
I appreciate it. And again, for any of you who have questions in the audience, you can feel free to send an email to the office. When we do this live recording, I apologize, we don't have the closing slide on there, but you can direct even through our website, blueheronfinancialgroup.net, and there's a chat box, and you can certainly send any of your questions our way, or through email or a phone call. So thank you all. I hope you're staying cool wherever you are. And yes, my heart goes out to those who are working out on the roads in this climate. And I hope that we get some rain here tonight. We're all looking for it. So Quincy, hope to see you soon. And I thank you all for your attention today. Have a great.
Thank you all so much. Have a happy 4th of July. Remember what it stands for, a wonderful country.
It's funny you say that. I signed up for our community food tent once again, and there's a couple here on the Blue Heron team, and we work together, and we're schlepping the burgers and the hot dogs and watching the old-fashioned parade go through. Like, how much better can it be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a day off, but it's a day off for a wonderful reason, our history. Yeah. Thank you, Margie. Thank you, Sarah, also. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Blue Heron. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.